Hello and welcome to this Candidates Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Marin County. I'm Judy Binsacca, and joining me today is Margie Eller, who will be our timekeeper. There are 3 candidates running for 1 seat for a 2-year term for the State Assembly District 10. They are Gregory Allen, Ronnie Jacoby, and Mark Levine. Greg Allen was unable to attend, but he has sent us a statement which I will read now. This is a statement on behalf of Gregory Allen, not to be confused with the individual of the same name who is up on charges for fraudulently claiming to be a Marine Corps veteran. Gregory Allen is an actual Air Force veteran and has the DD-214 to prove it. Unfortunately, travel delays have kept me from taking part in this event, so I thank you for the opportunity to make this statement. The issues I feel are important are the ones actually affecting us, the taxpayers, and our families. It has become abundantly clear that the majority of legislators in Sacramento have deprioritized the people who pay their salaries. Collectively, they have become more focused on what type of bag you can get at the grocery store than the quality of the textbooks found in schools. They become more focused on the salary and pensions of their public servants to such a degree that a county administrator retires at $750,000 while the state's roads and infrastructure crumble. They are actively dismantling the system in a way that will jeopardize your ability to live in homes that you currently own in order to implement programs that they can later tout during their next campaign. These legislators have become so detached from the realities that taxpayers face, taxpayers like you and me. I was raised here in Marin County and spent over a decade serving our country honorably in the United States Air Force. Moving back to the Bay Area, my wife and I raised our kids here and operate a small business in the high-tech recruiting industry. I have spent over 30 years volunteering in our community as a coach and a mentor to our youth, and I'm ready to give more by running for State Senate Assembly. Help bring common sense back to Sacramento by supporting me in my bid for State Assembly with your vote. And please visit my site at www.gregoryallenassembly.com. And now we will have the opening statements starting with Ronnie Jacoby.
Hello. So first I want to thank the League of Women Voters. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and also the Community Media Center of Marin. My name is Veronica Jacoby, or I go by my nickname Ronnie, and I want to represent you because I love living here and I care deeply about you and our future. I'm inviting you to join me in hugging the monster. I'll explain. Global warming and climate disruption can feel overwhelming and frightening. How can we add that to our to-do lists? But we can use my California Good Jobs and Climate Security Plan to kickstart us into complete solutions. Some details are at ronniejacoby.com. That's RONIJACOBI.com. We can reduce our collective and individual carbon footprints. It just takes a little time and creativity and determination, step by step. Large and small, well-planned actions can create a cleaner and greener future. Avoidance of problems and denial just gets us deeper potholes and excuses, and much worse. I read an article addressing climate change that said in the Air Force, hugging the monster means embracing fear so we can create the best results. We have all the tools to create a better future, but we need to embrace our fears, resistance, and discomfort, and look at everything clearly and thoroughly and do what needs to be done. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. And I will do what needs to be done. There are many changes we can make on the state level, and additionally on an individual level. I went car-free for all of 2011. I'm car light and car sharing. I came here on the bus. I have a super small footprint, I save a lot of money, and I do it without expensive technology, though expensive technology can help too. I have a lot of fun and exciting adventures. On the state level, and as individuals, I want to serve you and hug the monster together. We can create a better future. I will do the best job of all the candidates at creating solutions to all our current challenges while creating jobs plus climate security all at the same time. Thank you.
Now we'll have the opening statement of Mark Levine, who is also the incumbent.
Hi, thank you very much, Judy and Margie, the League of Women Voters, and the Community Media Center of Marin for hosting this debate today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to represent Marin and Sonoma County in the State Assembly for the past 3.5 years, and I'd be glad to have your support for re-election in 2016. The past couple of years, I've had the distinct opportunity to serve as the chairman of the California Assembly's Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee during this historic 5-year drought that we've had, the worst in recorded history. And to be able to bring the perspective of the North Bay and to bring my leadership to trying to solve our California's water sustainability for the long term has been a huge honor, and also something that we can take a lot of pride in here in the North Bay. Over the past 3 years, I've been able to pass over 40 laws working on climate change, working to respect the service of our veterans, specifically to make sure that those who have service-induced post-traumatic stress disorder have that taken into consideration if they've been convicted of a crime. My climate leadership has been recognized with endorsements from the Sierra Club and the California League of Conservation Voters, as well as endorsements from the California Democratic Party. Our state has a long way to go to make sure that we never see the depths of the Great Recession that we've had. I've been fortunate to also be able to pass California's Rainy Day Fund to put it on the ballot, which voters have then elected to pass. And we put billions of dollars away to make sure that in the next recession, we don't have to cut our budget quite as badly as it's been cut in the past. I'd like to say thank you for the distinct pleasure of serving this district, and I ask for your vote.
Okay. And now for the questions. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and we'll start the first one with Ronnie. What are your top 3 priorities for the next year?
My top 3 priorities for the next year are addressing climate change while also addressing all our other issues. The difficulty with climate change is that it's an exponential increase. So abrupt climate change is something I'm very concerned about. The wildfires that have been hitting Canada and the United States are very serious. So when I was on the Santa Rosa City Council, I was always bringing up a comprehensive program, and a number of people have given me credit for being the driving force behind Santa Rosa's award-winning climate plan. And I would take that to the state level. And I'm very excited that Marin has Marin Clean Power, and Sonoma County has Marin Clean Energy and Sonoma Clean Power. And we are state leaders, and California is a world leader, and I'm very excited with what I could do representing this district to really kick it up a notch, because we need to, because our future and our children's future is so important. And we need to do all we can right away. Okay. Thank you.
Mark?
My 3 top priorities include climate change, education and its link to jobs, as well as relieving the North Bay's traffic congestion. In the environment, I've been focused on reducing our carbon emissions as well as taking carbon out of the environment with both using biochar as well as compost to cover rangeland, which actually brings and sequesters carbon from the atmosphere and puts it into the ground. As chair of water, it's been incredibly important to have oversight over the water bond that Californians passed in 2014 to make sure that we have a sustainable water supply into the future and make sure that the depths of the drought that we're in today are not repeated in the next drought that we have as well. This year for education and jobs, I've authored AB 2156, which links higher education programs to the actual job skills that employers in our region need. We've been seeing success with our community colleges doing this work, and my bill would require the California State University and the University of California to partner more closely with our employers to make sure that the graduates we have the skills that they need. Right now, we're projecting a $1 million degree shortage, a $1 million degree shortage by 2025, that our businesses are going to be looking to hire people that don't have the skills that they need. And AB 2156 works to change that and make sure that the students that are graduating do have the necessary skills. Lastly, traffic. I've been successful authoring a law signed by Governor Brown to reopen the 3rd lane on the Richmond Bridge, we also have to work to make sure that there's funding available for the Novato Narrows as well as the SMART train as it gets to completion at the end of this year.
Okay, thank you. Mark will be the first to answer the next question. What legislative measures would you propose to prevent damage to the state from potential drought conditions in the future?
Well, this is an incredibly important issue because what we've seen during this current drought is that while water deliveries have been cut off and ended essentially for agriculture as well as Southern California water districts, there's been a very heavy use of groundwater. So we were successful this past session to actually enact the first ever groundwater management law that California has ever had. It's the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and we need to make sure that that law is followed and pursued all the way to completion to make sure that local agencies are able to measure water use as well as make sure that it's not over-relied upon in future droughts. SIGMA, as it's called, will make sure that we don't drain all of our groundwater aquifers, but also that we don't have the subsidence that we've seen throughout California and the Central Valley specifically. We also need to continue focusing on recycled water and stormwater capture. This water can be used to recharge our groundwater so that we don't end up with further subsidence and that over-reliance on groundwater. But we need to do more. I've passed legislation to make sure that homeowners are not fined if they're not watering their lawn, that they can actually change the turf that they're using to make sure that they're not overusing water and using drought-tolerant plants and landscaping. These are all very good things, and we need to continue and do more.
Ronnie?
Yes, it's very important to take great care of our water and create greater resiliency and drought resiliency. And the city of Santa Rosa, we worked hard to get incentives for rainwater harvesting and gray water reuse. And it's very important when considering groundwater recharge that one does it in a way that does not contaminate water. Also, banning fracking and not damaging and not risking our critical water resources. It's all part of an overall method of protecting the environment, and thank you.
Ronnie will be the first to answer the next question. What are your thoughts on Measure AA for a clean and healthy bay? That will be on the June ballot for all Bay Area counties to protect their coastline from sea level rise.
Well, I'm in support of AA, and I think it's very sensible to use our money and have a small added property tax on to create the funding. And I am very concerned with sea level rise, and every dollar we put into prevention of further carbon emissions is a dollar well spent, because the sea level rise and temperature rise is very critical. So I'm very supportive of Measure AA.
Okay. Mark?
Measure AA is a $12 per parcel tax to combat sea level rise around San Francisco Bay. The San Francisco Bay has been the beneficiary of generations of activists that have sought to restore the bay. And what Measure AA will do is allow for us to prepare for sea level rise by restoring wetlands around the bay that can absorb that rise as it occurs over the next several decades. It's a small down payment to help us combat sea level rise, about $500 million over a 20-year period. But we know that the costs of making sure that the bay can sustain sea level rise are in the billions of dollars, many billions, probably at least $10 billion. So it's a down payment to begin doing this work. The North Bay will be the beneficiary of this. The San Francisco Bay Authority will be the one that administers these grants, and it has a Citizens Advisory Committee as well. So I'm supportive of this. I do believe that there can be further accountability brought to the spending of these funds, that I'll be working with the Bay Authority and its advisory board to make sure that our local communities have, so that we can provide the input and the oversight necessary to administer the spending of $500 million.
Okay. Ronnie will be the first to answer the next question. Do you think Governor Brown's high-speed rail train for California is a good idea? If not, what would be a better idea?
Well, I am supportive of high-speed rail. It's easier to get people on a train than on a bus. I did come on a bus and bike, but trains are great, and speed is great, and air travel is very, very carbon intensive. So I think high-speed rail is a good thing, and I think also supporting transit, period, is very, very important. The more we get people out of single occupancy vehicles, the better. And the more ways we have of doing that, the better. Thank you.
Mark?
The question for me as a lawmaker is whether or not California is prepared for the transportation system that we need for the next 50 years. And the answer is that we're not. High-speed rail does have a role in that. It will help move people throughout California. It will do that in an environmentally sustainable manner, also reducing traffic on our roads and connecting communities that have otherwise been bypassed throughout California, where there can be greater economic development and so perhaps even less crowding in communities like ours because there are opportunities in other parts of the state. High-speed rail is a wonderful way to travel. Other nations have adopted this much more quickly than we have. There isn't even a single high-speed rail opportunity in the United States. This will be the first one, and it will help California maintain its lead among the nation's states.
Okay, Mark will be the first to answer the next question. In 1978, the State Chamber of Commerce opposed Prop 13 because it dreaded the property tax, quote, split roll of residential and commercial properties. Now, 36 years later, there is talk of just doing that. What do you think about splitting the property tax rolls?
So Prop 13 passed with a number of unintended consequences. When people voted for that in 1978, we were really concerned about pricing people out of their homes. As there was real estate speculation, taxes were increasing, but income levels were not, and so people didn't have a way to pay for increased taxes. Prop 13 helped protect that, but the split roll is very different. It treats commercial property separate from housing, and it is appropriate to think about ways that we can make changes to it so that the revenue that's been lost over many generations can be recouped. We have to be sensitive about how we do it. People, small businesses, family-owned businesses that have real estate, that have long-term leases, have to figure out a way that they can have increased taxes and yet be locked into the long-term leases that they have. There was a deal between Democratic lawmakers and the California Chamber of Commerce to reform this system, and that fell apart a couple of years ago. We need to revisit that in the coming session.
Ronnie? Yes, Prop 13 does need to be revised, and it's good to protect homeowners, but businesses need to pay their fair share. And yes, we need to do it in a wise way, so we also protect business owners, but that they contribute to the greater good. And thank you.
Okay, Ronnie will be the first to answer the next question. What is your position on Proposition 50 on the June ballot? That's the constitutional amendment that suspends a legislator and withholds him, his, or her pay and benefits.
Could you give me a few more details? It suspends a legislator?
Well, if a legislator is being accused of doing some bad things.
Some wrongdoing. Okay.
Wrongdoing, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't looked into it yet. But yes, if a legislator is accused of some wrongdoing, it does make sense to suspend them. And although I need to look further into the details, but I've been a little focused on this. Yeah, when wrongdoing has been accused, it's important to have there be consequences. Thank you.
Okay. Mark.
Unfortunately, a few years ago, 3 senators at about the same time were both accused of wrongdoing. 2 have since been either convicted or have pleaded to a crime. The other one left office under a shadow of these allegations. The Senate suspended these members, but these members then were able to sit home while collecting a paycheck. I voted to put Prop 50 on the ballot to make sure that if they're sitting at home, not doing any work, while under the accusations, which were true for 2 of them, and we don't know about the third, that they're not going to sit at home sitting on the couch while collecting a paycheck. There are a lot of other reforms that we need to do to make sure that we can hold lawmakers accountable, and Prop 50 is a good first step.
Okay, Ronnie will be the first to answer the next question. What are your suggestions for the best ways to support housing that is affordable to our seniors, our workers, and our young people?
Well, there are many ways. I really like single room occupancy and encouraging the availability of single room occupancy so that at least there's a much greater barrier between homelessness and having a home. A small home is much better than no home, and there are ways to do in lieu fees. There's ways to mandate certain amounts of affordable housing in new construction. And when I was on the Santa Rosa City Council, we did work on all those. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mark?
There's a lot that we can do to make sure that people have housing in California. And this year, the State Assembly has put forth a housing package, a $1.3 billion one time, to make sure that we can deal with the homeless and housing shortage that we have in our state. The first is focusing on rental housing and providing tax credits for people that need help, are making about 60% of the average median income or below, which in the Bay Area is a very difficult thing to live on and still pay for the high skyrocketing rental costs that we have in the Bay region. The other one is home ownership opportunities, that we need to make sure that local governments have the resources necessary to make sure that they can have affordable housing stock in their jurisdictions. A lot of this was taken away when the legislature and the governor during the Great Recession undid redevelopment. We need to make sure that those tools are in place once again. We also need to be supportive of farm workers in our state. They work very hard, and we need to make sure that they have the housing available to them to make sure that they can live in the communities that they need to do this work, lest they end up on the roads and highways driving great distances, as often they end up doing in the Central Valley, polluting our environment. Lastly, we need to make sure that we have tools and resources to provide housing for the homeless, and that's part of the $1.3 billion package.
Okay, Mark will be the first to answer the next question. Do you agree that regional and local planners should coordinate growth with transportation infrastructure? Do you have a suggestion for which agency should lead?
I've actually been highly engaged in this issue, and just this past week, the San Francisco Chronicle invited me to write an editorial about how we do transportation planning in the state, and particularly in the San Francisco Bay Area. I believe that there is an opportunity for ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission to work more closely together. But I think that it's time for us to have a separate, independently elected Bay Area Transportation Commission so that there is accountability for the people who are making these transportation and land use decisions that is, quite frankly, sorely lacking right now. We've seen a Metropolitan Transportation Commission that has made many decisions over a generation that have not ended up with alleviating our traffic problems, and they need to be held accountable for that by perhaps dissolving that entity and creating a new one. And I think that that opportunity would then present itself for the planning functions of ABAG to then become part of the Transportation Commission that I envision, which would also be publicly funded so that we can have people who are representing our communities making those decisions and be able to pay the attention to it that they need. Right now we have county supervisors from Marin who are making decisions on how highways should be built in San Jose, and county supervisors from San Jose making decisions on whether or not a third lane should be built or reopened, on the Richmond Bridge. They are highly staff driven. They are responsible for balancing budgets back in their home counties, making sure that law enforcement has the tools that they need back in their home counties or their home cities, and really can't make the transportation decisions or even the housing and land use decisions that we need in the different regions of the Bay if they don't have the time to put into it, given all of the other responsibilities that they have.
Ronnie?
It is difficult when one agency controls the housing allocations and the amount of housing that's supposed to be produced, and another agency controls transportation, and they don't have accountability with each other. So another agency could make sense, or a combined arm of the two might be even better. And yeah, people absolutely need housing. It's very difficult, and linking it with transportation so that buses and trains can be used, and bikes, and having all our connectivity. I think the time has come to put significant money into transportation, and making it easy for people to take buses and trains, and also the connectivity between all of those. So, and yes, having greater amounts of housing right near trains and buses is something that we absolutely need to do. Thank you.
Okay. Ronnie will be the first to answer the next question. How would you rate the transparency of the legislature, and why?
Are we allowed to make comments on the grades of people who are already in office by watchdog type groups? Are there any regulations?
The answers are really up to you.
Okay. Well, so Mark Levine got a C from a progressive organization, and there are report cards on votes. It is, so transparency is a complex issue because, well, for example, there's a bill that Mark Levine was a secondary author on that's been shown to be unconstitutional, and I don't have the number of the bill right in front of me, but what happens with some legislation is it's so complex that it needs experts to review it and to point out to the people it's going to impact what the unintended consequences or the underlying consequences are. So I believe transparency is very, very important. When legislation comes before me as an assembly member, I will welcome all diverging opinions to the table to try to come up with something better if there needs to be an improvement in legislation. And when I'm creating legislation, I will do that also. So I think transparency is very important, and I don't think we have it to a high enough degree yet. Thank you.
Mark?
Transparency is incredibly important in my job as a lawmaker. We need to rebuild public trust in government. And unfortunately, there are hundreds of different special interests with business before the state legislature. Often, they're seeking to gain at the expense of someone else. And too often, we're asked to make a decision based on that. These special interests, of course, may have report cards that they push out and try to label as something that's trying to do good things for good people. And we know about those independent expenditures or those super PACs. They name themselves committee to do really good things for the great state of California, but we really know that they're driven by special interests. So what my job is not to look at a support list or an opposed list when legislation comes before me, but to actually read the bill, figure out what the desired outcomes of the bill might be, but also to anticipate what the unintended consequences could be. Special interests don't really care about that. Special interests want their way, and lawmakers with courage need to stand up to that and actually push back and work toward making sure legislation has the desired outcomes that will actually benefit everyone and benefit the common good, and not just a win for some, necessitating a loss for others. I take great pride in my approach to my work and to the legislation that's before me, and that's the work that I'm going to continue doing if I'm reelected.
Okay. Mark will be the first to answer the next question. What more can be done to help municipalities reduce their pension obligations?
So in 2012, the legislature, along with Governor Brown, passed what was called PEPRA, which was a mild form of pension reform. This is a very difficult issue because after I was elected, I actually advanced a pension reform bill that the governor showed no appetite to continue working on, and that the legislature and the labor groups also had no interest working on. I was able to be successful making that bill into something that made sure that members of the CalPERS board had financial education so that they could bring some expertise to their work managing the largest pension fund in the world, about $300 billion under investment and management. I've authored legislation this year to make sure that those pensions are fully funded. This bill would actually guarantee a rate of return for CalPERS investment in California infrastructure. Just to sustain California's transportation infrastructure today requires $6 billion of investment. But what we've seen with CalPERS is that when they're looking to invest in infrastructure, they're doing it somewhere else. They've invested in real estate in New York. Just recently, last week, they invested in a toll road in the state of Indiana. We need to bring that money into California. And by guaranteeing a rate of return, if that is a solid investment that won't cost California anything, it will actually create jobs. And of course, it will fully fund those pensions. If that rate of return is not met, California will help to make sure that that investment is repaid. But California taxpayers are on the hook for that already. So by guaranteeing a rate of return, we actually don't lose anything. And in our current funding of transportation infrastructure, for every $1 we invest in transportation infrastructure, we're spending another $1 on interest on bonds. That money goes to Wall Street and banks and not to California. My bill will change that.
Ronnie?
Yes, on the Santa Rosa City Council, we addressed pension reform and pension obligations, and we took care of the unfunded liabilities. We did that working with the pension funds and with the employees. And I am very interested in working to keep our pension investments, encourage them being local, like Mark was talking about. That's a very good idea. Also, on a side note, but that also is related to fiscal responsibility, there's a state bank that was created before the recession, and I think it was the state of Dakota, but I'm not sure. I've forgotten. But they weathered the recession very well, so I'm very interested in making it much easier for there to be public banking on the county and state level, and to keep that money in our area. Thank you.
Ronnie will be the first to answer the next question. How do you plan to help California reach the bold new goals of having 50% renewable energy generation by 2030 and a 50% improvement in building efficiency? Will you take the lead on renewable energy issues?
I will, and I'm very, very excited by that, and I'd actually like to surpass that. And with community choice aggregation, which we have both in Marin and Sonoma County, we have public, I get to choose to have 100% clean power, which I do. I pay the extra, and I'm fortunate to have some rental properties where I also make sure we do 100% clean power. And I'm very excited about community choice aggregation going all over the state, and spreading it beyond our state also, actually. But we can do it, and we're leading the way, and it's very exciting. And Bill Nye, the science guy, he's an engineer also. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I specialize in energy management. And I know so much can be done with efficiency. My company did the energy audit for Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, and they had a net reduction of 30%, and that's total savings. When you increase efficiency, you it's a win-win-win. I always add environment onto the win-win-win, and so I'm thrilled about addressing clean energy and making that a top priority because it's financially sensible, and it also the money, it's a job creator. Clean energy is a wonderful job creator, and also regulation is also a job creator. So making sure that we get rid of waste and incentivize solar and incentivize wind and all those wonderful things. Thank you.
Mark.
Climate change is incredibly important. It's a daunting threat to our community here in the Bay Area, in the North Bay specifically. And of course, I supported SB 350, which set those goals. But this year, I'm authoring AB 1530, which further encourages distributed generation, on-site creation of clean energy for hospitals and businesses that are trying to go 100% green, but also need to have a redundant supply of energy because they need that energy all the time. They can't ever have it go down, and AB 1530 will encourage that type of on-site clean energy development. I also authored first of its kind legislation in our nation to create electric vehicle charging stations in commercial development as well as residential development. In the future, for every housing unit or for commercial development, there will have to be a certain number of spaces that are wired for EV charging stations in any new development that takes place. I'm very proud to have authored that law.
Okay. Mark will be the first to answer the next question. Do you support the twin tunnels being proposed by Governor Brown to deliver Delta water to Southern California?
This bill actually came before the Water Committee a couple of weeks ago. I voted to require a vote of the public, that Californians would actually get an opportunity to vote on that on the ballot, whether or not there would be twin tunnels. I don't believe Governor Brown has made the case as to why the twin tunnels are the right approach to the problems that we have. We do have problems. Currently, the Delta ecosystem is ailing, the levees around Delta communities are failing, and there is no certainty of water deliveries to Southern California or to agriculture. But I'm not sure that the twin tunnels are necessary or the right approach to any of those problems. Governor Brown has some work to do to make sure that the case is made to voters, as I'm requiring him to do by voting for that measure to be placed on the ballot.
Okay, Ronnie?
I have many concerns about the twin tunnels. I believe every watershed should be self-sufficient. That's the way to ensure that we take good care of our water. It's the way to reduce our costs, energy costs for transporting water. It's the way to reduce the expenses of, besides the energy costs, the actual expenses. And I would want to put that money instead into rainwater catchment, gray water reuse, purple plumbing. On the Santa Rosa City Council, we did extensive purple plumbing. We expanded the program, and I am for new housing being set up so it can add purple plumbing, which is it's reuse of water. And there are many, many, many things we can do. And large tunnels taking water away from Northern California and bringing it to Southern California is not a sustainable, sensible solution. Putting it before the voters is fine, but actually, I'd need to look at how many voters in the South could steal our northern water. So thank you very much.
Okay. Ronnie will be the first to answer the next question. What more can be done to reduce gun violence in our state?
There are many things that can be done. Certainly, gun shows are a serious problem, it's very important to have background checks. It's very important to not allow assault weapons it's very important to put restrictions on the availability of guns. And yes, guns for hunting and things like that can make sense, but we need to find out where the problems have come from, and stand up to the NRA and get legislation that will protect people and protect our youth and protect all of us. Thank you.
Mark?
Gun violence is a very serious problem. We've seen mass shootings across this country, and we've seen inaction at every level of government, from Congress to the state houses. This year in Sacramento, I've authored 2 bills to deal with gun violence. AB 1664 specifically bans the bullet button loophole. In AR-15s and automatic rifles like that, there is a button that can be pressed that detaches a magazine. Even though we have a ban on detachable magazines, this bullet button has to be open, can only be pressed if there is a tool, but the tool can be magnetically applied to the button, making it what we call it, a bullet button. I'm going to close that loophole, make sure that we can't use these detachable magazines. This type of a weapon, AR-15 with a bullet button, was used in San Bernardino. Also the LAX shooting where a TSA agent was shot and killed. And we need to make sure that we've got these dangerous weapons that can kill people indiscriminately with multiple rounds out of magazines are not on our streets. And so I've got a bill in the Assembly's official gun violence package, and also in the Senate to deal with this as well, working with members of both houses to make sure that we can get these dangerous weapons off our streets.
Okay, Mark will be the first to answer the next question. Recently, the U.S. Supreme Court was split on the challenge to the practices of California teacher public unions and the requirements for workers to pay mandatory dues for union activities even if they aren't members of the union. How would you address that issue?
I'm not sure it needs to be addressed. What happened in Fredericks, the case that was before the Supreme Court that was deadlocked because it was 4-4, was that some members or the union provides services that all members benefit from, but even people who are not members of that union. So if they're collectively bargaining for pay raises or for anything that they're bargaining for, non-members benefit from that as well. And there has been a practice to make sure that people who are benefiting from the work of that union are not free riders, benefiting from that work while getting while not having to pay for it. And so the practice is that there is a nominal fee that everyone is supposed to pay, so that they're not benefiting without being a part of compensating for that benefit.
Okay, Ronnie?
Yes, it's when unions are important for representing people, and a nominal fee to support the benefits that people are receiving makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, this will be our last question, and Ronnie will be the first to answer. Comment on why the state legislature rarely overrides Governor Brown's decision not to sign bills that have passed by a large margin during legislative sessions.
Well, it's a shame. Governor Brown does many good things, but he also does some things that are not in our best interest, supporting fracking, for example. I would be very willing to stand up for what the legislature has voted on with strong support when it's an important issue, and just say, Governor Brown, you're doing lots of good things, but we need you to cooperate with this as well because our future is at stake. Thank you.
Okay, and that ends our question. Oh, sorry, it doesn't quite end yet. Go ahead, Mark, sorry.
Thank you, Judy. I've authored over 40 laws, but believe it or not, I've also had a few bills vetoed by Governor Brown. I obviously don't always agree with him. I want to talk about one of the bills specifically. We are at a 30-year high in the incidences of suicide in our nation, and this certainly affects California as well. People who commit suicide frequently do see a mental health professional prior to taking their own lives. We know this especially here in Marin, where we see the victims of suicide in jumping off of the Golden Gate Bridge, but also throughout our community. I sought to change this because when I saw that people who were taking their lives did see a mental health professional, and those mental health professionals were not getting training in suicide prevention, I authored legislation to make sure that in school and in their professional education after they've already received their license, that they do get this training. Unfortunately, the mental health professional boards fought this. They did not want to be told what or how they should be teaching their members, and Governor Brown vetoed the bill. We still have a problem with suicide in our country, and I've been working continuously with the mental health boards to make sure that they voluntarily change their professional education, and also with the universities that are training our future mental health professionals as well. But if they don't make that change, I'm going to author that legislation again. Any number of lawmakers, the other 119 of us, the 40 in the Senate, the other 79 in the Assembly, have bills that are important like this as well, and they all deserve another day before Governor Brown. But I think at the end of each session, we also have to determine, we're all passionate about our bill, but do we all get a chance to put this before the governor yet again by overriding his veto? It's a difficult thing to do, and it's a difficult thing to try to figure out if 120 of us get that opportunity. And each year, I think we regret not having been able to make a more forceful case to Governor Brown. But fortunately, if we're returned to office, we'll be able to make that case again.
Thank you. Now that does indeed conclude our questions. And the candidates will now make their closing statements of 2 minutes each. And reversing the order in which they had their opening statements, we'll start with Mark Levine.
Thank you once again, Judy and Margie, the League of Conservation Voters, as well as the Community Media Center of Marin for hosting this debate. Thank you as well to Ronnie Jacoby for being here, and Gregory Allen, who's absent, for also participating in democracy. It's an election. It's election time. Everyone who wants to run has an opportunity to run. That's how I got my start in 2012, and I'm really glad to participate in that democratic process again this year. I've had a pretty amazing time the past 3 years in the legislature, and as I'm up for 2016 to run for re-election, it is not lost on me that now for 2 speakers of the Assembly, I've served as their chairman of the Assembly Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee during the 5-year historic drought we've had, the driest on record in our state, responsible for oversight of our water bond, responsible for oversight as we transform our state parks and make them magnificent again, and places where all of us can go and visit and rejuvenate. Also, during a time where we've gotten out of the Great Recession and set aside money in the Rainy Day Fund, which voters approved after lawmakers put it on the ballot, so that we've got billions of dollars set aside to make sure that the cuts we need to make when the next recession comes won't be as dire and severe as the ones that we saw just a few years ago. I'm honored to have the endorsement of the California Democratic Party, the Sierra Club, the California League of Conservation Voters, and numbers of community leaders and mayors here in our community as I run for re-election in 2016. I ask for your vote here in the June primary and again in November. I'm Mark Levine. Thank you so much.
Ronnie Jacoby.
As your Assembly member, I will protect you, your family, and your tax dollars. I will listen to you and make our budget go farther. It costs 10 times more to rebuild roads than to maintain them optimally. I will make timely infrastructure maintenance a top priority. I will push reuse of materials and new technology. I'll fight for best deals for you with open competitive contract bidding. I will fight to protect our water and our forests and create wildlife preparedness. I will say no to big money's special interests with big impacts on our future. For my background, I was raised bilingual by immigrant grandparents who instilled in me the virtues of hard work, determination, and frugality. I worked my way through UCLA and earned a degree in mechanical engineering and a professional engineer's license. For over 3 decades, I've improved our Bay Area through working on air quality and transportation at the US EPA and as an energy conservation specialist and small business owner. For the past 30 years, I've dedicated myself to improving our local quality of life and the lives of others. I cared for my grandfather with Alzheimer's for many years, and later during my service as a councilwoman, I cared for my dad in my home for over 4 years. I've parented 2 daughters and 6 foster children. I co-started the Sonoma County Special Olympics soccer program, and I co-founded the Sonoma County Water Coalition to ensure we have sufficient water supplies and healthy waterways. I did that in 1994, anticipating the problems we're coming up with now. I served many years on the executive committees of the Sonoma County Conservation Council and the Sierra Club, and also the Task Force for the Homeless, and much more. I have the brain, hearts, and guts to be an excellent assembly member. I will address all our current challenges while weaving job creation and climate security through everything. I will never give up on our future and future generations. I'm committing over half my salary to local nonprofits to strengthen our support net. Please see ronniejacoby.com for more information or call 707-575-5594, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
And that concludes our candidate forum. For more information, you may want to go to the League's votersedge.org website and enter your street address and zip code, or you'll be able to see your own ballot with links to candidates, issues, ballot measures, and information about the voting process itself. We also have important election resource material on our website at marinlwv.org. Thank you again to the participants in this debate, to Margie, our timekeeper, and to you, the voters, for joining us. Thank you.